All right, welcome everyone. This Q&A. Again, I want to welcome everyone. This Q&A. Question came in earlier. The question was, do I have any recommendations on a book to read or even parts of Torah you could study to work on yiras shamayim, work on fear of heaven? So books, I would suggest, one good book is called The Ways of the Righteous. Talks about different gates of fixing up character traits. Anger. What else? Anger, being conceited. Things like that. And there are full chapters. On these things, how to get joy. How to become close to God. Different things. So I think that would be good because it puts things in perspective. In a way where, a person will see and a person will understand, God's awesomeness in the world. That could put fear of heaven certainly into somebody. Path of the Just by the Ramchal, by Moshe Chaim Mutato, of blessed memory. Also a good book. And another good book would be Shari Tshuva, Gate to Repentance, by Rabbeinu Yonah. Now, that book, I think, would certainly either make a person feel like a piece of dirt, or it could be tremendously inspiring, or both. Now, why do I say it can make someone feel like a piece of dirt? Because he goes through the stringencies, right? He goes through the stringencies of the mitzvahs. If you transgress, right? There are a bunch of, I have the book here in front of me, right? You got a bunch of different gates here. It talks about doing proper repentance. And then in the fourth gate, I think it's the fourth gate, it talks about the punishments for different sins that you do. Right now, when you go through that, there, right, it goes through atonement, different ways for atonement. Right, if you're liable for certain punishments and what the atonement is, right? So if you go through that book and you go through what your obligation is, or let's say better, what the punishment is for various sins that a person does, right? So if a person looks and understands the severity of what they do. Meaning that, I'll give an example. Give one example. He says over there, if a person nullifies or doesn't do a positive command. What's a positive command in the Torah? Eat matzah. That's a positive command. Positive commands of keeping Shabbos. Positive command for men, Jewish men, put on tefillin, tzitzis, etc. So let's say a person doesn't do it. Let's say on Passover, they don't eat matzah when they're obligated to. Or they don't put on tefillin. Says Rabbeinu Yonah over there, person may think, okay, so you didn't do it. We're not talking about where you're under onus, where you couldn't do it, you were sick or whatever. Right here, you didn't do it for whatever reason. Where you're obligated to. You have no excuse in this case. So says Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah there says that a person has to be careful because there's no positive commands in the Torah that is not dependent on resurrection of the dead. The person may say, oh, big deal, so I didn't do it. So you didn't do it, what's the big deal? But if you see the severity, if you understand that any positive command the person didn't do, we're not saying they were sick or under some sort of onus. The idea is it has to do with resurrection of the dead. In other words, the person doesn't do the positive command. We're not saying he's not going to get resurrected. But in the end, it's a crucial component for resurrection of the dead. Doesn't mean you can't repent if you didn't do it. But a person can't say, I mean, they could in theory. They could say, big deal, so I didn't do it. So I didn't get a chance to do it today. That obligation. So if it's so crucial that resurrection of the dead is dependent on it, then how can a person do? It's no big deal. What's the big deal? I didn't do it. That's just one thing. There are other things. Punishment could be very severe. You get spiritually cut off. Other things. And he tells you certain ways that you're going to get atonement or possibly get atonement. So that's pretty severe. Now, was that enough of a deterrent not to do it? So that's a whole discussion. That's a whole discussion. So let's analyze. A person comes out of idolatry. Either they're going to stay in Noahide, they'll stay a non-Jew, they'll keep whatever a non-Jew has to keep, or they'll go through the process of conversion. But something that comes up regularly is, but look at what I've done. That's not necessarily what the person meant, right? Because they were only asking about fear of heaven, right? What can I read? What can I learn to give me more fear of heaven? But really, this is part of a bigger issue. And the bigger issue is, how do you wipe away years, decades of sins that you did? Now, if a person realizes every sin we do pollutes the universe spiritually, pushes the final redemption further away. So our actions matter. We may think I'm an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. So what I really do doesn't matter. Not true. But see, we don't see the bigger picture. We don't see the repercussions. So you say, okay, but how can I change? Or how can I want to change if I've been doing all these terrible things for a long time? So Chovos Levavo says, as it brings down in Duties of the Heart, that one of the ways of self-introspection and taking accounting of your actions is by thinking what I've done in the past. By not thinking so much of what I've done that you can't go forward. Because as my Rebbe would say, you live in the past, you have no future. But see, the evil inclination comes. What's the evil inclination? Tell me. The evil inclination tells me, can't do it. It's too hard. I'll never get it right. I always make mistakes. Why should I even bother? 98% of the world doesn't have a clue about any of this. Why should I be like everybody else? I mean, the evil inclination is very good at his job. Doesn't need me to give him a recommendation. The person will never get out of bed. On the other hand, you can't whitewash it. You can't just say every time you do the wrong thing, oh, well, it's always next time. Right? But you continue going in the wrong path. It's also bad. So a person has to find somewhat of a happy medium. But I would say like this, like a Victor Miller, a blessed memory. You want fear of heaven? Take a walk in a park. Why walk in a park? See nature. Think about the function of the human body and how it works. And how if one thing gets messed up, the whole body's messed up. Right? Even by one tiny microbe. Not just, a person got run down and then they got sick. Whatever. Someone was sick and they gave it to you. And you got a fever. Can't eat. You're throwing up. All kinds of things. See, if a person would live their lives on a regular basis, thinking about all that and how the world works, God's in charge of everything, and nature, of course you have fear of heaven. You don't need specific books to read. Just think about the awesomeness of what he does. I mean, I'll give a graphic example. I won't get gross here. But, imagine if a person, you don't want to have to come to this realization. See, we only realize what we have when we don't have it or something happens. Right? So we'll give an example. An example is anyone who's ever suffered from constipation. Again, we're not going to get gross here. We'll keep it clean. Person who suffers from constipation, they feel sick. They need to get this stuff out of their body. You can say, it's gross, it's this. Yeah, but you don't get it out of your body, you're in trouble. Right? We need to get toxins out of our body. But anyone who's ever suffered from it, they're in pain. They're in a lot of pain. So different reasons why it's caused doesn't really matter. It's not really the point. But nobody wants to get it. Other people like to get the flu either. Fever, can't eat, throwing up, both. Out of commission for a couple of days. Like on their back, can't move. Because they what? I have to think about getting sick. Person has to think one idea. As Rabbi Victor Miller, blessed memory, said, you want to live with the Eibishter, you want to live with God. You want to have that fear. Think about all the good things he does. And just the opposite. Think of all the terrible things we do. And the fact that we spit in the face of the king. And we understand it's got to be payback. Serious payback. So why aren't we shaking in our boots every day? We should be. The lack in us. If a person would focus, this does not have to be the focus of every second of every day. But if a person focused 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it makes a person think in a different way. They'll act in a different way. They'll think twice before they do something. Maybe. But see, it can't be just about fear. It can't be just about fear of punishment. Fear of punishment is a very low level of fear of heaven. Why is it a low level? Because you're going to refrain from doing certain things, or maybe a lot of things, because you're afraid you're going to fry in hell forever. You're afraid you're going to get punished. That's the level. I'm not going to say not. But it's not a very high level. But someone will say, well, what if that's where I'm holding? Okay, got to hold somewhere in the world. You need fear of heaven. Fear of heaven doesn't necessarily lead to, love of God. But love of God could certainly lead to fear of God. Why? Because you understand what God does in the world. You understand where I'm holding in the world. or what my purpose is and what I should be doing. The person may say, but that's all good in theory. So how do I put it into practice? So there's always the mind, the heart disconnect. But see, the only way it gets off the ground is if we change the way we think. That's the only way. Don't change the way we think. And the Gemara says, changing the way we think, or let's say better, if a person thinks terrible thoughts, that can be worse than the sin itself. You can say, but I didn't do the act. 100%. Even if you didn't do it. Right? And 99% of the time we'll say, words in my heart are just nothing. They don't mean anything because I don't act on it. But who says in the future you won't? You can say, I'll be in control. We don't tempt fate. We don't give the evil inclination more fuel. We don't want to add more fuel to the fire. Why not? Very simple. Because if the evil inclination doesn't get you now, it'll get you tomorrow. If it doesn't get you tomorrow, it'll get you the next day. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where it can be very easy to sin. So we're going to take all kinds of precautions not to. So you're going to say, but I'm in a place, I hear things, I see things. So what did we say before? We said a person has to work very hard to control their thoughts. Not an easy thing to do. But if we control our thoughts, then a lot of things are very different. And we look at things very differently. We're not going to get trapped by the evil inclination at that time. Because I'm in control of my thoughts. So now someone will ask, okay, so if that's true, how do I get there? How do I control my thoughts? That's a much harder thing. Much harder thing. So the Gemara says, why is the person sin? Person only sins when niknas ba ruach shtus. When it enters him a foolish thought, idea, spirit. So the idea is that a person sins in general because our minds are free. If our minds were thinking in Torah or learning Torah as much as possible, how can we come to sin in general? Because our minds are busy with Torah thoughts, Torah ideas. So if a person's mind is thinking about Torah things, or wherever you go, you're listening to Torah, then your mind doesn't wander. But if a person fills their mind with garbage, and they see things they shouldn't see, and they waste time doing things that take them away from Torah, then it makes it much more difficult. I'm not going to say impossible. I don't want to scare anyone, but it makes it very, very hard. Because the more garbage you steep on your soul, the harder it is to breathe. You need like a snorkel in order to breathe. So you say, but I've been doing this for 50 years. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've been doing it for however long. Is it hard to change? Yeah, it's hard to change. But if a person just says, well, what can I do? This is the way I am. And I'm always going to make mistakes. And I'm always being a loser. I can't do this. I can't do that. So what's the whole point? There is a point. And if a person got knocked down as a boxer, a bad boxer, got knocked down once, what do? You brush yourself off. Second time, you brush yourself off. Third time, same thing. Right? But, a few more times, you get knocked out. Right? Because it says A righteous person gets knocked down 7 times, but he gets up. Is it easy to get up? Not easy to get up. Much easier to stay down. Somebody points out that's a very fine line, acknowledging necessary past regrets while slipping in the darkness. You're right. That's what we're saying. You can't whitewash. You can't just say, well, if I live in the past, I have no future. Can't say that. And just say, well, I'm not going to work on it. Person has to take stock of what they've done. Then they have to figure out a way how they're not going to do it again. And they're not going to get trapped again. And the evil inclination has a lot of patience. Tremendous amount of patience. So we got to find different ways to fight it. But there are people that will say, what can I do? That's the way I am, not going to change. So that the evil inclination has a field day. Doesn't have to work hard at all. They'll just put it in front of them every so often. They'll sin and that'll be it. They'll give in again. And a third time, and a fourth time. We can't can't keep doing things and then, have all this remorse, regrets. You're not going to get anywhere. Because what will the remorse and regret do? The remorse and the regret, on the one hand, may make you feel like a piece of dirt. May realize that, okay, I have a lot to work on over here. Fine. But we have to make a plan how we're not going to do certain things. Make a plan behind the plan behind the plan. No, I'm not saying it's easy. To change anything is hard. But here we're talking about changing our mindset. Now, the only place you can't think about Torah is in the smelly place, the bathroom, whatever. But otherwise, I go anywhere. I should be thinking in Torah. Should be listening to Torah if I'm not working, or if I can work and do both at the same time. Because we have to pump ourselves with spirituality. If we don't pump ourselves with spirituality, other things are going to go in. The impurity will go in a lot quicker. It'll attach to you like glue. Right? So I'll give an example. You take super glue. I wouldn't recommend this. Take super glue, put it on, 2 of your fingers and go like this. It'll be very hard to pull them apart. That's what impurity is. Impurity is like super glue. It attaches to your neshama. It attaches to your soul. And you need to purge it to get rid of it, essentially. Because the more we feed into it, the harder it is to fight it. That's why a person does one thing wrong, feels bad, whatever, does a second time, does a third time. Now it already becomes part of his nature. Once something becomes part of your nature, it's a lot more difficult to fight. 100%. It's a lot more difficult to fight. So the first step is understanding what I'm doing in this world. Understanding my relationship to the one above, to God himself. What's my connection? What should I be doing? And think about, third step would be, think about all the goodness that he does for us. Now you could say, it's really bad. Well, it could be a heck of a lot worse. The alternative is always worse, right? Most likely. But if we think of all the chesed, all the acts of love and kindness God does, how can we even think of terrible thoughts? How can we even think of doing terrible things? That's really a rebellion against God. So you're going to say, but how do I get that to my brain? Well, getting it to your brain is not so hard. Understanding that, very easy. I think it's very easy to understand. I don't think this is rocket science. But at the end of the day, I now have to take that understanding and put it into practice. That is a lot more difficult. A lot more difficult. And sometimes, like the Rambam says, we have to go to the opposite extreme, right? In certain things, when it comes to character traits. I have to go the opposite extreme and then meet somewhere in the middle. Right? You have to take the middle path, the Rambam says. I have to take the middle path. Now, if we slip and fall, then we have to take it in stride. We have to have remorse. We have to have regret. We have to say we're never going to do it again. But a person has to make a plan how they're not going to slip and fall again. And a person can be on the straight and narrow path for a while. And then something comes up, person under stress, whatever it is, and then falls back into it. And there are many things like that. But I think the hardest thing, for most people, because they never do it, is to understand what I'm doing here. What's my obligation in the world? So good, we understand our obligation. Now that we understand our obligation, right, that what God expects from me, then now we have to put it into practice in our everyday life. See, we have a heck of a lot too much free time. We have a lot of free time. Even busy people have certain level of free time. And what does a person do during that time? They say, I want to veg. I just want to relax. I heard someone today, saying that imagine, he said 1985, but he said even 1995. He said, imagine if someone would have told you, you could have a phone that acts like a TV. You get every cable station, right? All the garbage that's fit to print. And you have it on a handheld device. Now, if you would have said that in 1995, they said, come on. What kind of power can a phone have? Can understand TV exists, cable exists. Okay. But say I have it in the palm of my hand. So 90, I would say, I'm not going to say 100%, but it's a very high percentage of the majority of things that people fall into the traps today. It's either based on their handheld device or a computer screen. That's where it is today. And a person doesn't have filters. A person doesn't have boundaries. A lot of interesting things to look at. A person can be into the news, could be into history, could be into other things. I'm saying things that are okay. What they should be doing or not is a different issue. But let's say, technically speaking, it's not a problem. Person looks up different things. Right? Then all of a sudden something flashes on your screen. You didn't, you got a pop-up blocker, something even beat it. You saw something you weren't supposed to see, you go to something else, boom. It can happen in a split second. It can happen very quickly. At the same time, person will say, but I got a golden opportunity. Can watch all these videos, listen to these great rabbis. True. Right? That's very true. But the other 95% out there is garbage. I'd say it's probably a higher percentage. So that's where, so as I was listening today, as I was saying, that's where it starts. That's really where it ends. Right? That's the whole game over here. That's what we're fighting. We're fighting technology. I need technology. I need to be on a computer. Right? Person even may need a smartphone for, they have to be on call, they have to text, whatever. Send emails, while they're on the go. Person's playing with fire. With fire. A lot of problems. I don't have to get into a lot of problems. See, but people are not just using the phone for a phone. If that would be the case, then I wouldn't have an argument. We're not using the phone for a phone. Good part of the time, they're using it as a phone. And what else are they watching? What else are they doing? A million other things. It could be it was better. We had to work the ground. Everyone had to be in a farm. Work the land in order to have food. They were busy all day long. They don't have time to think. We don't have any free time. Too busy doing other things. Today, everything, is a lot easier. Everything's computerized. Washing clothing used to be an all-day affair. Now very easy. Stick in the washing machine. After that, it goes in the dryer, hang it up, whatever. Okay, it takes time, but all I get used to. The problem is we have a heck of a lot of free time on our hands. Doesn't matter if a person works. They work 10 hours a day. During that time, they got free time. They have free time. The person only sins when his mind is free from Torah. You can say, but my mind can't think 24/7. We have to train ourselves, even when we're doing other things, to try at least, even if we can't think in Torah, we still have to uphold what the Torah says. Just because the person works in whatever environment, then you don't throw a Torah out the window. Right, so back to the original question. I mean, I can speak about this for days. Right, the original question was, how do I get fear of heaven? What books are good to read? What parts of the Torah? So I gave a number of books, right? But the idea is, think about nature. Think about the human body. Think about the fact we're a small, infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. We live in a town, in a city, in a state, a country, continent, planet, galaxy. We're getting very small. So when we think about the bigger picture, even though man really is the pinnacle of creation, if we do what we're supposed to do, we are, the best of creation. If we don't do what we're supposed to do, we're no better than animals because animals are created before us. So it's a little bit of mussar for us to say, oh, you think you're so great? You know better than an animal. Animals were created before you. So in the bigger scheme of things, we're really small. And how nature works and all the miracles of nature, that should put fear of heaven in everyone. Because how long does that last? Think about the human body. Doesn't matter how long you think about it. Question is, you put it in your mind, you put it in your heart. Because when I think about the awesomeness, how am I ever going to sin? How could I ever think of doing something wrong? That's the mentality we have to have. The problem is, A, we don't think. B, we just act. And C, whatever happens, happens. A person made a mistake. Okay. Try and fix it up. Try this, try that. Maybe think about it for half a second. We don't think. We don't think. And there's so many things today that boggles the mind that's automatic. That we don't have to work that hard for. So we have free time. We have time on our hands. Question is, what are we doing with that time? You'll say, listen, I'm at work, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but you know what? People aren't dressed properly, people having bad conversations, speaking Lashon Hara, this, that. Your focus is what you have to do, and you have to tune everything else up. I'm not going to say it's easy. I've gotten this question a lot also. What do? You work in a certain place, people aren't dressed properly, speaking Lashon Hara, cursing. So you got to be thinking in Torah. If you remember any Psalms, by heart, just think of them in your mind. See, the mind trains us. Because if I put enough good things in my mind and I constantly go over them, no matter where I am, again, unless it's a place that smells or whatever, then you can't be thinking in Torah. That changes the way we think. Because that pushes out the impurity. Totally pushes out the impurity. So when I have to be somewhere, whatever, okay, but I'm still have to act like the Torah says. Can't push in line. A lot of things that you have to do, just proper way of acting, according to the Torah wants. Someone will say, but I don't see people do that, not even the religious community. People do this, people do that. They push in line, cut people off on the road, this, that, okay. I'm not saying it's right by any stretch. And we're our own worst enemy. But you know what? What do I care? And what does God care what other people do? When you get upstairs after 120 years, when we get judged, is God going to say, why weren't you? He's going to say, why weren't you like your neighbor who was righteous and you weren't? No. He's going to say, let's open up your file. Let's see what the source of your soul was. Let's see what you did. Let's see what you could have done. Who is he comparing you to? Yourself? Your true potential, whatever that is. Say, hey, Rabbi, I don't know what my true potential is. Nobody does. So how can someone say, I heard someone say this a number of times, I'm good. I'm happy being mediocre at best. You think God's going to be happy to hear that? You're going for a job interview. What do you do? Just average. I'm Joe Mediocre. They ever going to hire you? No. What are we living for? Most people are living from one desire to the next. That's it. Next steak, next. Who knows? Which the irony is, person had a great meal. Could have been a totally kosher meal. At some point, it's going to go out the other way. But yeah, you enjoyed the meal, but it's not just about food. Food is idolatry today in many ways. And you see, I used to, a bad habit, but, you go somewhere to eat, whether you're a guest by somebody, whatever, it's a bad habit to watch how other people eat. It's a bad habit because, let's say you eat a little bit slower, a little more methodically, you don't just, eat like Uncle Asaph, just like stuffed in his face, right? The Medrash says, when he said I was dying, he said, give me some of that red stuff. So when Yaakov made him swear to sell his birthright, right? The Medrash says, fine, he sold it and he shoveled it in like a vacuum cleaner. Like he sucked it in like a vacuum cleaner. Like, he hadn't eaten for months. I see that when I go to a kiddush sometimes on Shabbos. It's like people eat like no tomorrow, like they've never seen food in their life. Again, it's a bad habit to look at people and to watch, right? But, we're our own worst enemy. And the way people talk about food and this, there's a limit. I'm living for food. That's the most important thing. So, of course, it's not the most important thing. Why should I enjoy a nice meal? No one's saying you're not allowed to. Says Rav Yisrael Solanter, a blessed memory, the founder of the Musar movement, of the ethics movement. What did he say? Even a person has food on his plate, leave a little bit left over. Don't just eat every last thing, no matter how hungry you are. Why? Because they want to teach people a little bit of discipline. They shouldn't eat everything. But see, if you would say this in a secular world, they're like, I'll eat what I want, I'll do what I want. What's the big deal? Because they don't want to have control. They don't want to be disciplined. They don't have self-discipline. And they're not interested in it. See, for us, eating food is permissible. Drinking is permissible. But who says I'm allowed to be a glutton? Who says I'm allowed to eat like a pig? No matter how hungry you are. Should have manners. Everyone should have manners. They should have manners outside. Person's gonna cough, you should cover your mouth. Forget about wearing a mask, not even gonna go there. But if you're not wearing a mask, at least cover your mouth. They don't spread germs. You gotta say, isn't that obvious? Isn't that the Aleph base? It's the Aleph base, so why don't people do it? Or why don't some people do it? Either you tell me they were never taught. That very well could be. Or they just don't care. But there's a problem. There's a problem. How can someone not care? Now, if they're not sick, right? So I cut a lot of people sick. So if they're not sick, okay, they're coughing. It's not a good thing. They don't cover their mouth. But I'm not going to get sick from this because they're not sick. Or maybe tell me certain germs you might get sick. Let's say you're not going to get sick from it. Right? And it's something where, they don't have a cold. Okay, they sneezed. They coughed. It doesn't mean they're sick. It doesn't mean even if you're nearby, you're going to catch it. You're going to get anything. So let's say 99% of the time that's true. Let's say. Now, if they were sick or, had a cold or whatever, certainly they should be careful. How many people they have the flu or stomach bug is like half the world. Like, it's unbelievable. People say, oh, masks don't do anything. Yeah, last year no one got the flu. You can say, wow, that's an interesting point. Why else did they get the flu? The people sick left and right. Forget about getting corona. Right? The flu is like unbelievable what's going on. People be getting sick. So why aren't people careful? Simple hygiene. I'm not asking for the moon. Simple hygiene. If you tell me it's a secular person, I don't have a claim. I'm not going to say anything. Because there are many things they do wrong. But even secular people at least have a conception, I would think. Have a conception about hygiene. Because they're big into externals. Okay, we're not necessarily big into externals. Externals don't mean a heck of a lot. But they're simple, basic rules. I would say they're simple, basic rules. If you have to cough, cover your mouth. That's a simple, basic rule. And even if you're not sick, what do I care you're not sick? Who wants someone coughing in their face? Nobody. You can see it's one of my personal pet peeves. It annoys me. I'm not hanging around with secular Jews over here. With Arabs. What they do, I have no, I'm not going to say anything. Because they don't know any better. Why would they know any better? They don't have anything guiding them. Maybe they are a little more stringent. When it comes to externals and this stuff, maybe they are. Okay. But in general, I care less because they don't have a proper upbringing. They're just going to do whatever their mind tells them to do. Whatever their heart tells them to do. They're doing things all based on desire. Maybe they understand it's good not to cough in someone's face. They should cover their mouth. Okay? So maybe a lot of people do it. Maybe they don't. But I'm not even going there because why do they know any better? They are subservient to their desires. That's it. Doesn't matter what basic common courtesy is. A lot of them don't have it either. They certainly don't have it. Seen it with my own eyes. Right? But there's a major difference. The difference is we know better. We should know better. Derech Eretz Kidmul Torah. Derech Eretz comes first. Proper character traits come first. How come people don't get it? So again, it's either one of a couple reasons. Could be other reasons. Could be they just were never taught. I don't know how an Orthodox Jew is not taught this. Okay. Could be they're never taught. Or it could be even if they were taught, they're not stringent on it. And they don't think it's that important. Yeah, I don't know. Could be other reasons. Could very well be other reasons. But see, we have to uphold what the Torah says. And we have to be the best Jews we can be. That's our obligation. Right? And if not, we're going to be held accountable. Right? 100% we're going to be held accountable. It's not going to person say, I didn't know. Isn't that something obvious? Even non-Jews going to be liable for that. These are things that are obvious. You take care of yourself, you guard yourself against others. Or let's say better. That you're guarding yourself so you don't affect others. You don't give others germs. Isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious. Why don't people get it? I mean, I could say maybe they're just all fools. Maybe. I don't want to go that far. But see, the desecrate Shabbos they would never do. Right? This has been Adam l'chaveru, between man and man. So certain things they would never consider doing. So why this? Because they don't think it's that important. Right? They don't think it's that important. What, they don't care if someone else gets sick? It's not an Indian by them. It's not something that they think about. They just don't. Again, see, they were never taught it. Can't imagine. But even if they were taught it, so what happened? Because they don't get caught up in externals. There's nothing to do with externals here. This is common courtesy. Common courtesy. I don't know, maybe it should be my flagship thing. I should just keep ramming people with. Just the people doing this aren't going to hear it. So it doesn't really help. Right? There's certain places I go, there's proper hygiene. Nothing to talk about. Other places, terrific. Horrific. They could be big Torah scholars. They could learn a lot. They who knows? I think this is the outfit. But the point over here is, let's not get lost here. The point is that we have to be thinking in Torah on a regular basis. And whatever free time we have, that's what we should be doing. Because if we let other things sink in, we're finished. There are a lot of interesting things to look at, get more knowledge on, etc. I'm not going to say everything is going to be forbidden. But see, you open up a Pandora's box. Once you open up a Pandora's box, very hard to close. Right? I succeed today, but I fail tomorrow. I succeed the next day and the next day after that, and then I fail 4 days in a row. Different thing. It's hard. Right? Maybe we're not consistent as we should be. Right? A person can slip and then slip very far. Can also happen. We want to try and minimize that to the best of our ability. Not always so easy. But see, it doesn't matter, as the Holy Bible says. It doesn't matter how long a person's been doing X, Y, or Z. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you forget about what you did in the past, you have to move on. Because if you don't move on, then you just keep going in that same direction. And what a lot of people end up doing. They say it's too hard to change. Rabbi Akiva started his process of tshuva at the age of 40. Imagine learning the Aleph base with his 5-year-old son. I can't imagine he could have fit one of those chairs. A bunch of 5-year-olds. Imagine the embarrassment. He didn't even know the Aleph base. In the end, look who we became. You're going to say, well, it can't happen to me. Who says? We don't know what our potential is. We're certainly not going to rest on our laurels. Right? Because King David himself says, we're only here for 70 years. If I have a strength, 80 years. Everything over that's a bonus. Doesn't matter how much time we may have left. Time to start is now. You got to forget about the past. But you got to make a plan for the future. So fear of heaven starts by understanding the awesome responsibility that we have. And understanding all the goodness and how God runs nature and all that, medicine and galaxies and all these things. So when you think in those terms on a daily basis, I'm going to sit there and have bad thoughts. I'm going to sit there and say things I shouldn't say. You're going to say they may come out anyway. Again, person has to start somewhere. we can make excuses till tomorrow. Very easy. So I'll give one example. You're going to say, well, for most of my life, I use curse words. Everybody does. You know what? You expect if I take a hammer and hit my thumb, I'm not going to curse? What, do you think I'm at that level? Okay, so let's say you're not at the level. Right, so what do? How am I going to fix up in myself that I shouldn't curse? Ever, right? How should I do that? So the answer is, take 20 minutes a day. Let's say half an hour. I'll be generous. Half an hour a day. During that half hour, no matter what happens, you're not going to curse. Right? Half an hour a day. Same thing by Lashon Hara. No matter what happens, you're not going to transgress any of these. Over time, you're going to have a higher awareness. Then when you hear, God forbid, someone curse, and you've been working on this for X amount of time, it's gonna make an impression. Totally gonna make an impression. Ooh, this person talks like a truck driver. No offense to any truck drivers out there, right? Oh, this person's uncouth. Low class. Look how he speaks. Well, you weren't that much different. So what changed? Your mentality changed. The way you view it changed. Now, does that mean you're never going to curse? No, it doesn't mean that. Right, but now you have a higher awareness. Now you're aware what my responsibility is. And now you see change. Because now you see over time, try and do that for a couple months. You're going to see your awareness changes. And about speaking Lashon Hara, same thing. If a person would say, okay, from this time to that time, no matter what happens during the day, during that time, not going to speak Lashon Hara. Not going to listen to Lashon Hara, not going to speak Lashon Hara. Now, there's certain things you're not in control of, okay? But at the end of the day, the person has that higher mentality. And you start learning the laws of Lashon Hara on a regular basis. It changes the way we think. Changes the way we speak. Now, the Chofetz Chaim did not say, you're not allowed to speak. That's what people complained when he came out with this book on the laws of Lashon Hara. He said, Rabbi, come on, you're telling me I can't speak. Chofetz Chaim said, I didn't say you can't speak. I'm just teaching you how to speak. It's a major difference. So, we have to learn how to speak also. Person say, but I'm in a work environment. People curse and say things all the time. So, what do you have to do? People start talking. You should go like this with your ear so you don't hear it. But if you do hear it, you got to get it out of your mind. Can't believe it. If it's Lashon Hara, guard yourself if it may cause you damage. But you certainly can't believe it 100%. If someone curses, you think in your mind, oh, can't believe someone cursed. What a terrible thing. And you think in your mind how disgusting it is to you. That puts you in a different mentality. And that's what we have to change. We have to change our mentality over here and how we think and how we look at things. Because if we don't, we just go through the same things over and over. It's that's like a gerbil on the wheel, just spinning and spinning. That's all we do. Those are the same things over and over and over. Maybe we learn from certain things, maybe we don't, whatever, but it's all the same. We never get away from it. So how am I going to do that? I have to change the way I think. If I don't change the way I think, it's over. I'll just be that way the rest of my life. Now, a person can change, different things, maybe that they believe, and change in other ways. But really changing the way I think is kind of crucial. Because if we don't change the way we think, and we just, have all kinds of things pop in our minds, I'm not saying everything's forbidden, but one thing leads to another. Right? I guess that's really the bottom line. One thing can lead to another. So what do? You nip it in the bud. Don't let these thoughts come in. And if they do, don't think about them too much. Just try and get rid of them as much as possible. Because the more you feed into it, the more problems we're going to have. The fear of heaven, in general, we have to realize as well, the awesomeness of our responsibility. I'll give one example. The Rambam says the law of repentance. We have to look at what we're doing right now, that there's a scale. There's a scale in the world. And the scale is going like this, up and down, right? Good deeds, bad deeds, whatever. And if it stays further down on bad things, there could be serious repercussions. So my action right now has the ability to turn the world in the positive, or God forbid, in the negative. So that means my actions, my thoughts have repercussions all the time. So now I would ask the $1 million question, and that is, okay, that's what the Rambam says. And if that's what the Rambam says, then why don't we think in those terms? Why don't we think in those terms? We should. 100% we should. But a lot of people don't. And the reason is, could be because we're lazy, one thing. We're definitely lazy. But at the same time, if a person really constantly thought that, again, you'll never get out of bed, you'll never do anything. But we have to be aware. We have to be aware of what our actions mean. So now, if I learn Shari Tshuva, if I learn Gates of Repentance, by Beinu Yonah, or I go through the ways of the righteous, or any of these books, they teach me how to think and look at the world. And again, I think that's 90% of the problem, because most people don't know how to think and look at the world properly. But even if you tell me, okay, I have a high realization, I do understand these things, but what do you want? My evil inclination is so powerful. So what? I agree. 100%. We said at the beginning, I gave my agreement. The evil inclination does a great job. Heck of a job. He doesn't need me to say that. But in the end, I got to work hard to fight against it. In the merit for not giving in and to changing the way I think, even a little bit, the merit, the reward is exponential. But forget about the reward, because the more I do that, I change the way I am. I change the way I think. I change the way I speak. Now you're going to say, well, Rabbi, that's great. I'm only taking baby steps. Take baby steps. That's fine. That's all we should take. Right? And the reason is because if I try and bite off something more I can chew, I can't do it. It's too hard. So I take baby steps. Right? But baby steps are building blocks. I could take steps backwards also. Right? But if I know the right thing to do, and now I implement it, you keep trying. You don't give up. The evil inclination will tell you can't do it. It's too hard. It's it. You're right. You made a mistake today. Probably make a mistake tomorrow. Probably say something you shouldn't say. Think something you shouldn't think. Okay, but I have to work at it. I don't just throw in the towel and say, okay, I can't do it. I've seen people say that. It's too hard. I can't do it. I'm never going to change. So whatever it is, it is. No, it's not whatever it is, it is. And it's not, so I'll get a less portion of the world to come. No. Who says you're going to get there? We have to fight to get there. So it's about changing the way we think about the world and then implementing that. So the first thing is, go through a number of these books, think, right? Understand what I'm supposed to do, what's bad, and potentially how to fix it. Work on that. Even if a person changes a little bit, over time, they see huge things. Huge things. Because we're not the same people anymore. You're going to say, but just the other day you cursed. And you cursed, 5 times or whatever. Now you have a different mentality. And now over the next month and a half, 2 months, you didn't curse at all. And you even look down upon people that curse. That's a whole different thing. That's a whole different thing because you now have a higher, there's a higher mentality, right? There's a higher reality over here. Now I understand why it's not good, why it has a negative effect on my soul. Doesn't mean the evil inclination sits by and does nothing. But a person has to realize you got to fight it. You can't just give in. Because this is about what life is. We're in this world to struggle. You need to be in this world, and Mesil Hashem says, right, it brings down the path of the just, right? We're here to what? To struggle. Right? And God's going to give us plenty of things to struggle in. Right? But if you don't struggle in this world, you're not in this world, there's no Avamina, and you'll never get to the next world. You have to be in this world. And this world's very hard to live in. But God gave us a set of instructions. He gave us a tremendous amount of instructions. Now all we have to do is follow it, implement it, and not get trapped by the evil inclination. You're going to say that's so easy to talk about. You're right. I agree 100%. It's very easy to talk about. So I would say it's about put up or shut up. That's it. We have to work hard. We have to work hard. You know, am I at the level I want to be? No. Do I have a lot to work on? Everybody does. Everybody does. But first we have to understand what it is. Then we have to go out and beat it. Then we have to go out and change. And we have to make the effort to do that. Now, if Israel Philanthropist would say, I think a person's whole lifetime maybe just changes one character trait. Maybe. Doesn't mean we don't have to try. Doesn't mean we don't have to work hard. And then we don't just say, well, I'm silly putty. Whatever happens, happens. You know, I'll take that chance later. This is about life and death. This is about whether you have anything in the spiritual world or not. Right? So that's pretty crucial. But again, some people will say, you know what? I'm just happy being middle of the road. But we have no idea what our potential is. None. None at all. A person can go through tremendous adversity and overcome it. Can overcome it. Could suffer in other ways, but can overcome it in different ways to a huge thing that a person never thought they could do. A lot of people out there like that. A lot of people, get so beaten down in life, they don't get out of bed. Okay, it's also true. Also gonna happen. They get in a rut, they stay in the rut, and that's it. They never get out of it. It's very easy. Person has setbacks or major setbacks, and then they just get depressed. They don't bother trying anymore because they know it's just gonna be another failure. Or Noah Weinberg, a blessed memory, I think started 4 yeshivas before Aisha Torah. They started, closed, or left, or whatever. They didn't give up. A lot of people out there don't give up. There are a lot of people that do. Right? But the idea over here is that we look at the world in a certain way. That should give us fear of heaven. But we cannot just waste time on a regular basis and think all this other stuff's going to happen. No pain, no gain. You got to put in the effort, and it might be hard. Withdrawal from certain things is very hard. No question. But the question is, okay, do I understand this is the right thing to do? I don't. If I don't understand it's the right thing to do, I can't say I have a claim over here. Because the person doesn't know what living for. But if you know what you're living for, then you got to make the effort. You got to at least make the effort. Right? And, person can say, well, God will understand. What do you mean? Why is God going to understand? If you're messing up in front of the king and you know better, yeah, punishment's a lot more severe. It's like we said on Sunday by the sin of Nadav and Avihu. Minor infraction, but they were close to the king. Higher awareness. So it's a catch-22. But aren't you better having a high awareness? We're better people knowing what the right thing to do is. We're going to say I could get burnt. I could get destroyed because of it. Also, catch-22. You're right. You're 100% right. But at the end of the day, you'd rather get burnt for something minor than living living life like a potato farmer doesn't know anything because he grew up in Idaho, right? No offense to anyone who's a potato farmer grew up in Idaho, right? They grew up knowing nothing. They live like an animal, they die like an animal. So if that's the case, what life do they have? Nothing. They don't have any life at all, according to Torah. They're considered dead even before they're buried. So wouldn't we rather, roll the dice, so to speak? And even if we suffer tremendously, isn't it worth it because we understand what the meaning of life is? It's worth it. I'm going to say it's worth it. But you also suffer tremendously, 100%. You know what? But I'm kissing the ground every day, thanking God where I am, thanking God, okay, I have a long way to go, just like everyone else, but I'm not looking back. I would have wished, certain things turned out a little bit differently, but I'm whistling like a lark happy as a lark over here, right? In general, even with other things going on, you know why? Because I know what the truth is. And I'm living what the truth says to the best of my ability. That is worth everything. Even if you say, okay, you know better, you're supposed to live at a higher standard, and God slaughters you this way, that way, and the other way. Also true. But isn't it better to live a life of truth and falsehood than just to go after, just to be like an animal, go after your basic desires? That's better to do. I would say. Much better to do. I'm not saying someone should have to go through suffering. But if that's the case, better have that than fantasy and things that don't make any sense. Right? It makes much more sense. You have a lot more meaning in life. And I see all the time what other people are doing. And just laugh. I could cry also. But this is life. This is what real life is. Come on. There's a limit. There's a limit. People say, I enjoy this. Who you tell me not to enjoy it, so enjoy it. You're not going to listen to me anyway, right? So enjoy it. But you're just giving in to base desire. That's all it is. So you're no different than an animal. Animals also program DNA. They do things according to whatever their DNA tells them. So you're doing everything, whatever it is that your desires tell you to do. Whether it's right or wrong, doesn't matter. And you'll justify it. So that's the way you want to live? Okay. Does that have any meaning? Doesn't have any meaning because you're subservient to desire. Who's the truly free person? The Mishnah Perkei Avos says, the one who learns Torah. We're totally free. Now, that should make us better people, but, we have to implement it. And we have to work hard. That's what it's about. That's what life is, right? It's a constant struggle. Constant struggle. Yeah, I'm going to stop there. I'll do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone that has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Whichever good beginning of the day, end of the day, or middle of the day, depending where you are. And everyone have a great rest of the week.